the Reverend Mzwandile Molo from the South African Council of Churches. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Reverend. Obviously, the churches had wanted to know ahead of the Easter period what they would be allowed to do, the President making the announcement. How have you received this news? And are you satisfied with the announcement? As I said, 50% of indoor and outdoor venues will be allowed to take 50% of their capacity without any maximum limit. Can you explain to us what that means? What do you understand of it?
Thank you very much. Greetings to you and the viewers at large. Firstly, we do want to thank the government for lifting of the state of disaster, national disaster, because indeed the country has been living through this pandemic and its restrictions for the last 2.5, almost 3 years. And that has created a very difficult reality of living a restricted life. As the church, we are not impressed at all with the decisions taken by the government as announced by the President today. We are not happy because, firstly, from the first word go, the churches sacrificed a lot in order for it to contribute to the fight against the pandemic. We also sacrificed in 2020 all gatherings, inclusive of all Easter gatherings. In the following year, we lived with a limited, very constrained reality around this. With the science that has improved over time and the indications that have come with the fact that whatever we are doing now, we have been able to break the back of this pandemic. The churches made numerous requests to government, saying to government two things. Firstly, allow us to meet and give us the responsibility to take care of those who meet in our churches. And that responsibility we do because we've got our own protocols that seek to make sure that our people are saved in the church. Secondly, when the President announced what he terms as the transitional measures, and in that he says to us, firstly, we can only gather for 50% of the venue. Secondly, we now must police the people who come to church because whether he calls it directly mandates or not, he is putting the responsibility on the church to police who enters into the church of God for purposes of worship, for purposes of spiritual building up, for purposes of care and love in the context of deep devastation. We are saying that is unfair of the President to put that responsibility on the church. We are saying we've got references of self-regulation that comes from business that has been allowed to self-regulate. Why is it that the church is not allowed to self-regulate and make sure that those who enter their spaces are people who can be looked after, and we are not asked to be police of people who come into the church? We are unable to ask to tell people who must come in and must not come in to the house of God.
May I just jump in there for a moment on this particular point, and I'd like to hear your views and perhaps your experiences. There are a lot of people who have felt that they do not want to vaccinate for religious reasons. They believe that for whatever reason, that vaccination is not what they want to do. Does it put you in a difficult position as a church to then have to turn away people who are worshippers, some of them who've been regular worshippers, because they're not vaccinated? Does it put you in a moral predicament?
Thank you. As the Southern Council of Churches, we have made a call on our people to do vaccination. We've got a program that we call vigilant, where we are engaging almost daily in conversation with our people. I absolutely cannot imagine any person who serves God who's going to stand in the door and say to people, because you're not vaccinated, you can't come in and worship God. I can't see that happening. And therefore, beyond putting us in a difficult position, it puts us in an untenable position, in the sense that We are a place of worship, a place of embrace of all of God's people. We are not asked to discriminate against anybody. And if we're now going to discriminate against somebody because of their vaccination status, we are put in a place where we are almost working against the basic tenets of being church, which is the embrace and welcome of all people, especially people who need care. People have lost so much. People have lost their livelihoods, have lost their lives. The children are living in households where they are basically the heads of the household. People's trauma has affected them mentally. All of these things are part of the offering that the church offers to people. And for the church to be perceived just as another normal gathering where people simply gather for social gatherings that have no impact in society, it's an unfair categorization of the role of the church. And we are saying at the Southern Council of Churches, Easter is upon us. We have asked our people for 2 years or so to sacrifice on Easter. And now we are asked to say to them, you can only come in if you are vaccinated. And by that, we have now become agents of government's mandate to deal with vaccination. Our view is that puts the church in a very, very unacceptable position. And we're asking for government seriously to reconsider its position and allow the churches to deal what the churches is doing in order to mitigate in the fight against the pandemic. We have done this. We are contributing. We are fighting this pandemic because we believe that this pandemic is a threat to our people. And we believe that government must listen to us, lest we get the view that government takes us for granted and doesn't listen to what our leaders are saying. Because these points have been made to government in numerous meetings from last year and sometime this year. What
are your expectations for this upcoming Easter period? Are you expecting people to come out in their numbers? I mean, I'd imagine that a lot of people are spiritually starved for such a time as this, a very important calendar period within the Christian faith, for instance. Do you think people will be able to keep to that cap of 50% capacity of a venue?
Our point of departure is to ask that we all work within the realm of the law. We do not want the church to be a place where the laws of the country are broken. That's why we are appealing to the government to take seriously the request that the church leaders have been continue to make, so that we do not get to a point where our people must make a choice of either following the government or following the God that they believe in. We do not want that choice to be put on our people. We are asking government to seriously reconsider so that our people are allowed to worship as freely as possible within the realms and limitation of fighting the pandemic as we need to fight it. SACC is clear in its mind that the pandemic the coronavirus is not going to disappear tomorrow. We've got protocols that we've put in place that makes it possible for us to manage our people, to manage the spread of the virus, and therefore commit ourselves into a journey of responsible citizenship, guided by love to God, worship to God, and by love to our neighbor, making sure that life is given its best chance to succeed. And that means, in our view, that government considering seriously its position so as to allow our people to worship within the realm of the law.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Reverend. Really appreciate your time and your views. Reverend Mzwandile Molo of the South African Council of Churches, just speaking to us about what the President has announced. The church unhappy, he says, just in terms of the cap on numbers for gathering towards the Easter period, and also saying that they are unhappy about the fact that they are now being made to police people who come into church, saying that they have their own protocols to ensure that all the non-pharmaceutical interventions are observed and that everybody is kept safe. So in just a moment, we'll be looking at the entertainment industry. As you know, not only here in South Africa, but the world over, this has been one sector that's been hit quite hard, obviously with the limited numbers on gatherings, even when there were no gatherings allowed at all because of a lockdown, and many actors and actresses complained that the fund that government had said it would disperse to them as COVID relief funds, they never received them. Many people obviously being without jobs, so that means no food on the table. So we'll be speaking to Katlego Batlani in a short moment, an entertainment and publicity commentator, all of that coming up here on The Globe. Don't go away.